Okay, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, Alhamdulillah, wa salatu wa Rasulillah, sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, Allahumma alimna ma anfa'na wa anfa'na bima alamtana wa zidna ilman. I was asked to discuss the issue of unmarried women. The sisters messaged, and they're saying, what do we do? What do unmarried women do? There's such a huge drought of men. There's no men available. And it's true, if you look at the statistics, there are more women than men in the world. And even if the numbers can be explained, that they're a bit closer, let's say, the statistics sometimes debate it, but in the end, we're talking about available men. Be it that they're not sick, they're not in jail, they're not in wars, they're not, etc., etc. So the question is, the sister said, well, what do we do? You know, I just dealt with a case where a sister was asking some advice, and the guy was just not willing to commit, her future husband. And she's one of 10 sisters. So what do you do as one of 10 sisters? You know what I mean? It's no joke, right? All 10 have to get married. And then another sister who said that, look, like the guy's just not willing to commit, and it's sad. And there's so many issues out there where guys are just not ready for marriage, they're just not able to get married, and there are so many sisters who need to get married. So what do they do? Of course, feminism loves that and is pushing for that to basically say, hey, keep being independent. You don't need men, right? You just stick to your things. You don't need to get married. Who needs to get married? And then, of course, you have a lot of Muslim sisters, practicing sisters, who are unmarried now, who don't, they say, well, I'm sorry, I tried. I cannot find a husband. What can I do? And then feminism loves to push it, and then they become more and more independent. They could become a mouthpiece for feminism sometimes. The situation, of course, this is not correct, but then they're in that situation. What can they do? That's the question. So someone say, they have to fear Allah, they have to be patient. Yes, indeed. In the Middle East right now, there's a huge percentage of women, age 40 to 50, and even above 50 in their 60, who are unmarried, virgins, and they will not marry. There's, a lot of tribal issues. Their families don't allow anyone. If they would allow, for example, foreigners to marry them, then maybe issues would slow down or would balance. But they don't. They want specific people from specific tribes, so there's all these specifics, there's all these extra requirements that are put by the family, and the woman suffers, of course. The woman suffers. And she can't get married. You have this is something that's causing a problem. So the Muslims say, these women are being independent, this is not right. But the question is, how do we solve this problem? Yes, it's not good to be a feminist. Yes, it's not good to be independent of men, and men independent of women. They have to be together. This is how Allah created them. Allah says they created from one soul, man and woman, and from them, وَبَثَ مِنْهُمَا رِجَالًا كَثِيرًا وَنِسَاءً. This is the way, this is the fitrah. But what about if it doesn't happen? Remember, we talked about many times in my lectures, say, how things should be and how things are. The should and the reality. And here we're dealing with the harsh reality of many Muslim women not being able, or not having a suitor. And keep in mind that it's also kind of culturally, people don't like it when a woman goes out and starts looking for marriage and start proposing, even though it happens, and there's nothing wrong with a woman proposing to a man for marriage. It has to be done in just a polite manner. And Khadija radiallahu anha, she sent a proposal to the Prophet ﷺ through someone. It has to be done in a nice manner and in a polite manner, like a man would do the same thing, right? But so what we're saying is, but culturally people don't like that. They look down upon a woman who goes out and starts looking herself for marriage. Usually what they do is they rely upon the family, they rely upon the wali. So I'm living here in Malaysia where sadly I hear this over and over again. It's becoming like a lot, where women say that the wali sometimes they don't care. They don't really put in the time. It's a responsibility to be a wali, a father, a guardian. So they say that a lot of men don't put in the time and could care less, and they have other social issues and the financial issues that they care about, and sometimes they just don't put the time in to find a husband for their daughters. They just wait for the guys to show up, and if they don't show up, then well, Qadar Allah, right? We always blame it on the Qadar of Allah. So, what do we do? What can be done? In Malaysia, for example, I just read an article where it said that about 2 million women in 2 states are unmarried and looking for marriage. 2 million. And the same numbers we find throughout. So this is the problem. I mean, I think I've convinced you of the problem. You understand the problem. In America, there's more women than men available for marriage, and throughout the different countries, there's the same. India seems to be a bit different. However, that is because there's a lot of infanticides when it comes to girls. And this is a practice that the Arabs used to do as well. Okay? It's a big issue. You can do some research on it. But in general, there are more women available. So what do you do? What about the sisters? How do the sisters who want to get married, they don't want to be feminists, they don't want to be independent from the man, and I want to be alone and astaghfirullah, do whatever haram and all that. No, they fear Allah, they want to get married. Where are the guys? Where are the men to go for? Of course, I did the polygyny series, and I believe 100% the polygyny is one of the greatest solutions for this problem. But remember, polygyny doesn't just let's just do it. It comes with responsibilities, and it has to be done properly. But again, we have to address the issue. So yes, Islam gives you solutions to real problems, real solutions to real problems. So one of the solutions is polygyny. The other solution is that men who are not committing, who are not willing to start, getting married, that they wake up a bit and they start doing that. Because a lot of guys are not available for marriage because they're not taking the step. They're not actually going ahead and getting married. They're just kind of enjoying, they're 30, being mama's baby, staying at home, things are provided, everything's okay. Why do I need to get married? Messing around. It's much easier for a guy to mess around, and there's less repercussions than a woman. And there's less stigma. So you find now that men are delaying marriage. Women are delaying marriage because they can't sometimes. They can't get married. There's no suitors. And as I said, it's not so easy for them to just go out there and do it. But men are delaying marriage because they're just not willing to commit. They're not willing to do what they're supposed to do as men, to step forward and take responsibility. Men are not responsible these days. That's why we're doing the Muslim Alpha Men course, to teach males how to be real men. Because the responsibility, stepping up to the responsibility, is not there. Now, of course, there's so many things within this equation that need to be discussed. But men need to step up. I mean, let's say even if, polygyny is one of the solutions. Step up. Men need to get married because there's a lot of them who just like to stay single. They need to step up and take responsibility. Counseling and marriage services. The masjids have to play a role. There's the stigma around and the taboo around marriage has to be lifted. Because it was not a big deal at the time of Prophet ﷺ. Proposal, divorces, things happen, bismillah. They used to live life and move forward for the sake of Allah. But it has to be, and the masjids have to play a very significant role. The leaders of the community have to offer services. I think this should be one of the main ones in masajid, because it protects the community from the fitna. People complain, our community is in fitna, there's so many issues, so much haram, so much this, our Muslims are going astray. Well, if you fix one of the main problems, the foundation of the family, the foundation of relationship, then maybe things will be solved easier. So the imams, the communities, and there are, alhamdulillah, a lot of masajid who do that, but it has to be a bit more open. It has to be a bit more without, shame. The next solution, obviously, you've seen that a lot of Muslim organizations and businesses have put out like marriage websites. The problem is with these things is that the filters can be problematic. You might not know who is on there and what's going on. I'm not putting it down. There's been some really good ones that have filters, okay, marriage sites. But a lot of times the guys who are on these marriage websites, they're just messing around. They just want to talk and they want to. So yeah, people put like, money, you have to pay for a subscription. So they think that that's going to slow down people. But what I hear from the people is that a lot of times it just becomes like, it's just a fooling around ground. People just sign up there, especially men. And then things can become inappropriate, right? You're in a virtual environment, it's like not face to face. Sometimes there's no supervision and people just start, it becomes like a whole romantic, sensual thing that's happening online. And yeah, that's an issue, because it's not that just people don't get married or don't commit to each other, but people do get online and start being flirtatious and romantic with each other online and sending pictures. Just recently I was approached by a group that was bringing a case forward with some problems online with some people and how things can get, how bad they can get. It's like desperation, you know what I mean? Some people become desperate, and sometimes desperate times lead to desperate measures, and definitely it's gonna cause people to do bad things. Shaitan is there, may Allah forgive them, but it's gonna cause problems. So the communities have to step up. People have to, the stigma and the taboo around marriage and proposal and getting married and getting to know each other has to be lifted, okay? It can't just be like waiting around for the wali and just, the wali has to be involved, of course, the family has to know, but we need to provide, we need to think outside of the box and to provide the ability for men and women to get married, but specifically, as I said, for women, because this is much needed. It's a huge thing, and if these women who are the architects of our family, because they will be nurturing our men, our boys, our girls, our daughters, our sons, if these women are not taken care of, if these women are not trained in Islam to know their position as mothers at home, to give the proper structure and responsibility, then of course there's an imbalance in our community, in our ummah. So what are the solutions? Again, in review, I think that the stigma has to be lifted. I think that the communities have to speak more openly about it, more marriage counseling. So there is, for example, a marriage conference that I know a brother here in Malaysia does. I'm not going to name it right now because then everyone might, anyway, but it's a huge success. It goes around the world. So marriage conference is something that's, is basically requested around the world. It's very cool. Guys and girls come together in one place. There's a lecture, there's scholars, there's ulama, there are, guidance counselors, there are people making sure things are done properly, separation, everything is done properly. But there's a certain screening process that's done on the spot. And people go through with their information, and then there's a selection criteria that gets narrowed down more and more and more. And there, with the wali, with the family, people meet face to face, they discuss, they ask questions, and a lot of times from there, the decision is made on the spot to move on, to get to know each other a bit more, or to even move on to marriage, because it's a long conference, so people do get to go face to face, ask the questions, and get to it, you know what I mean? So yeah, you have the choice to take a decision there with and alhamdulillah that the walis come, the families come. It's a full-fledged halal conference. There's nothing about just matchmaking or anything like that. No, it's people coming together. So there's certain tiers, there's certain layers of the conference and how it happens, right? With a general thing and the way the selection process is done and who selects what. And then you have two options. You can continue with getting to know each other more outside of the conference with the consent of the walis and knowledge. So there are filters and protections for that. Or in the conference, you can decide to have the nikah if you want. Okay? So marriage conference is definitely a solution. And I think more communities and more of such projects have been put. I also think that the masjids have to play a bigger role. Again, as long as some protection is there with involvement of families and walis and protectors to make sure that things are done properly and people are not just messing around, I think these are very important. As for the so the community has to step up. The imam, the leaders of the community, the families have to put these systems in our community. Very simple, not charging a lot of money. You shouldn't be making money from this. It should be sustainable. There should be some kind of fee to make sure that the service goes on, people are hired, so things are sustainable. But it shouldn't be something like a money-making business. It has to be a service to provide and help people. Okay, so marriage council, marriage conference, big all around the world. Then communities within themselves, the masajid, the imams. As for the online thing, this I'm still split over, because it needs to be checked. It needs to be something that is solid, not just a place for people to mess around. But definitely these days I've heard of quite a few successful cases online. I think Brother Baba Ali had a service at some point. I'm not sure if that's still around there, but there's been some services there, alhamdulillah. So it can work, but it needs to be done a bit more. And with technology today and with the involvement of community, I think it can. It should be there. There is a way to do it, right? But needs to be revised a bit more, and removing the stigma around this whole issue, and that women shouldn't propose to men, and and polygyny. I still am gonna, I know you guys, but you can review the polygyny series and my arguments and what happens and what should happen, and that's still. And again, within these kind of conferences, it can happen, and within the correct ways, done in the right way, all these systems can solve, inshallah, our problems when it comes to this, and the problems of sisters who want to get married, who are suffering, and who are pushed to be in positions that they don't want to be, and they need the providers. الرجال قوامون على النساء. Remember, the men are more responsible when it comes to this. The men have to take more responsibility, have to step up, be more mature, start doing this, as opposed to just kind of sitting around and enjoying, because it's easier. There's not so much stigma on the men committing sins and doing bad things when it comes to this. It's but it's a lot more on the women. It's harder for the women to get married. There is more stigma, there is more discrimination, and again, because Allah has put us to have this responsibility as men, it clearly shows that we need to step up to it. We need to step up to it, and if we don't, we're going to be responsible. We're going to be responsible for what happens, and these are the future mothers of our children, of this ummah, the ones who protect this ummah. And if we don't take care of them, if we don't solve these problems, we don't help them, we don't offer services and make it easy for them to do their basic right, which is to be married, to have a family, to have children, then that's why the ummah is suffering, and we're going to be questioned about it. Everyone, from the leader, from me, from you, from every single person, the leaders of the community, all those people are just relaxed, doing nothing about it, not thinking about real problems, and just talking about idealistic and theoretical problems. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala guide all of us to understand the reality of what we're going through. Our ummah is facing huge challenges, and one of these challenges is the issue of building a family, of marriage, of having the correct family structure, inshallah, and solving the problem of too many single women. And that's why the Prophet said, towards the end of time, a man will be taking care of so many women, right? Because that's what's going to happen. Just naturally, it will be that women will be more. So Allah and the Messenger, through the Messenger ﷺ, gave us the solutions to these problems. Question is if we want to follow or not, if we believe that Islam is the solution to real problems or not. Assalamu alaikum.